Good morning. Welcome to our webinar today. Thank you very much for joining us. We hope that the next 30 minutes will provide you with a little bit more insight around how you can reduce dropout rates in your recruitment process. So for those of you that have not joined one of our webinars before, I'd love to introduce the Curve Group to you. So the Curve Group is a leading provider of configurable HR and recruitment services. We support businesses with their entire employee lifecycle with an outsourced project or consultancy basis. We operate as a replacement or a complementary solution to any existing or HR recruitment team. Our clients benefit from engaging in a single provider to deliver their operational and strategic people needs, and we're absolutely really passionate about our relationships and doing the right thing, ensuring that our people and our solutions transform working lives. We've got some great USPs. We look at the employee life cycle, we look at our configurable services. There are lots of different options that we can work alongside you with. And as I've already said, our key thing is that we transform working lives. We're really proud of what we do and what we have done over the years. And here is just a few kind of examples of some of the awards and the accolades that we've got over that period of time. If you ever get lucky enough to come to Curve offices, you'll see lots of these awards dotted around kind of our organisation. So just by way of an introduction, my name is Anna Clapton and I head up the HR consultancy business or area of the business here at the Curve Group. And I'm delighted to say today that I'm joined by my colleague, Sam Davis, who's head of our Insights, Employee Brand and Marketing. And we're going to be taking you through this morning's webinar. So what do we have coming up today and what do we mean by a candidate experience, I guess, is the very first place that we're going to start. We're going to look at why candidate experience is so important right now, especially in what is really known as a candidate-led market, the impact of the candidate experience in your recruitment strategy and beyond, how to create a sense of belonging from the first candidate touch point all the way through, fulfilling your responsibilities to all the candidates in a fast-paced workforce, using analytics to continuously improve the candidate experience and really getting into that data and what does it tell you. We're going to look from candidate to employee and maintaining that exceptional experience all the way through, and top tips that can kind of help you implement into your business immediately so you can move forward. What I'm going to do now, though, is hand over to Sam, who's going to take us through the next element of the webinar. Thank you, Sam.
Lovely, thank you. Welcome, everybody. Lovely to have you here. So what I thought I would just start with this morning is just a bit of a refresher and a reminder, so we're all on the same page in terms of actually what is it that we mean by candidate experience, because it's one of those kind of hot phrases that's definitely being bandied around a lot at the moment, everywhere you go. So here's just a great quote from LinkedIn. So a candidate experience is ultimately how a job seeker, so a potential candidate, perceives your company's brand throughout your hiring process. So it's everything from the minute they're looking for roles right at the beginning of the process, looking at how they're reading your job descriptions, your interview process and all of your follow-up engagement and interactions during that piece, and then beyond, really. So at every single point during the above that we've just talked through, there is an opportunity for you to build stronger relationships with that candidate and really start to give them a really good feel for what it would be like to come and work at your company. And actually what I'm really pleased to see that because we are seeing a lot more noise and focus on this now, is actually the importance of that candidate experience is really being brought to light a lot more and appreciated by everybody, because it is such a tough market at the moment for recruitment still. And that is why a positive candidate experience is so critical and actually can genuinely help to convert your top choice candidates into your employees. Of course, there is the flip side of that if you're not doing a great job for whatever reason, it's quite a risk from your kind of company brand perspective, and it can actually cause candidates to drop out of the hiring process altogether. So it can be quite damaging if you're not able to kind of commit the time and the effort to it. The next slide is just essentially, thank you, Anna, a visual representation of what I've just explained. So some of you, if you're more visual, hopefully this will help to kind of take you through that candidate flow. So as we touched on already, it's everything, that experience from the moment that they first engage with your company Typically it's online through some content. They've seen a role that you're advertising, right the way through to kind of screening, interview, pre-employment screening process, which we'll come on to later, the onboarding process, and then through to their induction. And what's really important is that under wrapping all of that process, regardless of who's taking the lead, if you're jumping in and out of different elements, it's that communication and engagement piece, which we'll come on to later. You, Anna. So anyone that's been to any of these webinars before or spoken to me before knows that I love a bit of data, and pulling together the insights packs that we do every month at the Curve Group for our candidates, customers, clients, etc. There's again, like I said, a lot of noise and a lot of data and a lots of activity out there in the sort of talent market at the moment. And I just wanted to boil down some really interesting stats, which hopefully you're here already because you appreciate the value of candidate experience, but these are the kind of numbers that can help you take back to the business to build a business case for making any tweaks, further investment. So whilst vacancies are still coming down from that crazy high peak, like global kind of record-breaking levels post-pandemic, they're still higher than they were pre-pandemic. So I think we're on the 14th month of those vacancy levels dropping, but they're still much higher than they were before the pandemic. So it's really important to remember that. So it's still very competitive. Top talent actually typically only is kind of active in the market and open for opportunities and discussions and applications for about 10 days. So that's not a long time at all, which is why that experience piece is really important, as well as sort of agility. The time to hire is actually up generally. It's a very high level stat, clearly rolled up across multiple industries and sectors, but on average now it's taking up to 44 days on average to actually recruit somebody, get them an offer and get them ready to sort of and then have a month's notice period before they join your business. That is a very long time. That's effectively 2 working months, and if you think about the impact of that on the wider business, if you're backfilling someone that's left, that's quite a long time for other people to be carrying that role, carrying that extra responsibility. What I have found very interesting is actually I've seen a lot of organisations in various different industry sectors, but actually creating roles now dedicated to candidate experience to really help with their sort of talent attraction. Something that I never witnessed or saw pre-pandemic, but there are lots of vacancies now cropping up around, kind of candidate marketing and candidate experience, because it is that important, and people have realised it's another task quite often that falls on the side of HR's desk, and you're already very busy people and can't necessarily carry that on as well. I think the stats that are at the bottom hopefully kind of bring to life why once you've got candidates in play, even if you've got fantastic candidate, content, engagement and attraction material, you still need to then maintain that experience right the way through to once you've onboarded them and they've started. Because actually long, complicated processes are not fun. We know that. So why would you think that candidates would enjoy that? And why would you think that candidates would hang around and carry on if they're being kind of taken through a really long, painful process? And as you can see, the stats kind of speak for themselves. 80% of candidates find a lengthy recruitment process off-putting, as do we all. The last one that I'll just finish on is actually quite interesting. So when you think about your candidate experience, you're probably taking it on a role-by-role basis, and you've got a small pocket of candidates that you're working with. But actually, you need to think about the bigger picture, because if you treat those candidates well, regardless of whether they start with your organisation or not, they've got friends, they've got colleagues, they've got family, and actually everything that you do with them, there will be a ripple effect. So clearly, if you're not giving them a great experience, when they're talking to their family at the weekend, they're going to be conveying the fact that they haven't had a great time. And there's, again, a risk around your employer brand. But actually, if you do a good job and you give them a great experience, whether they come to your organisation or not, chances are they'll speak highly of your brand. They'll become advocates for you, which again is great. Free marketing, free PR, who doesn't love that? But the really interesting stat here is actually that when candidates make referrals for you into your business, those referred candidates tend to typically stay up to 70% longer in a business than those that don't know you from Adam. So again, I think it's worth thinking about your broader perspective on why that candidate experience is so important. So what does the impact of a candidate experience actually have on your recruitment strategy and beyond? Many of this stuff we've begun to touch on, but I just wanted to kind of boil it down to a handful of key points. So clearly, in a very competitive market, as we've mentioned, it is an opportunity for you in your business to differentiate your organisation, to kind of get your head above the parapet and become visible to candidates and become more attractive to candidates than competitors. That's really what it's all about. It's a great opportunity, even from that first conversation, that first screening call that you as HR or a hiring manager or recruiter has, to start building loyalty with the brand and start kind of building that sense of, why would they want to come and work with you, and motivate them to get behind what you're doing as a business. Clearly, of course, the number one driver really of a great candidate experience, and the reason why you're probably all here today, is that ultimately they choose you, they choose your organisation. And it really can make the difference between somebody coming to you or not, depending on that experience they've had during the recruitment process. Of course, I think if we think further like down the line a little bit, post-recruitment process, I think the more information, engagement, inspiration, all of those lovely positive words that you can do during that recruitment process will actually impact how quickly a candidate can become productive in your organisation, and why they become more motivated to kind of get straight in there and work really hard for you. So from a bottom line perspective, it could also absolutely have an impact. Clearly, if they have a poor experience, it will have the opposite effect, and they're not going to be motivated to come in and work hard for you straight away and get up to speed. I think one of the key things that I really wanted to pull on here as well is that community word, and a lot of the stats and the insights that we're seeing across the market at the moment are really coming to kind of fruition, that actually jobs are about much more these days than just money. I know it's a difficult time with all the inflation costs and previously it was kind of like, so what's the salary? And then we'll talk about the other stuff. But actually, candidates are now far more informed around other topics and are likely to choose different reasons to join an organisation, not just primarily what the salary is. So they want to know more about what community you have and the impact you have on your local community. And again, that experience and building that into your recruitment process can help them to really start to feel quite quickly part of that community and start to contribute to that. We mentioned on the previous slide actually around the fact that a great candidate experience will then kind of turn them into little mini marketeers for you, and can really help to kind of get the word out about your employer brand, which is no bad thing. It can also really help with that referral process, and we know that referrals typically are really great, strong hires with great longevity. And of course, while we're very focused in this webinar predominantly on that recruitment front end process, it will have an impact on your ability to retain those candidates once they're in situ, as long as, of course, you can keep delivering a great experience for that candidate once they become an employee. Thank you, Anna. Right to Bob on. So I thought I'd start with a picture on this one, which hopefully kind of gets you where my head was at when putting this content together, basically, and how you start to create that sense of belonging and engagement to deliver a great candidate experience straight out of the block. So I think it is really important. We all know from personal experience that first impressions really do matter. And therefore, I just wanted, again, to kind of distill what are the top 10 things that you should be thinking about when it comes to a candidate experience. And really the kind of premise of what I kept coming back to was actually that sense of belonging. And if you can nail that in your first sort of touch point with your candidate and then keep that running all the way through, they'll be a very warm, receptive, engaged, productive, motivated employee come the day that they start. So engagement, it's obvious, but it's really, really clear, and very, very important that you have to remember they're a human being, engage them, talk to them about their lives, their passions, make them feel like you're listening to everything that they're telling with you. Adapt your processes to their preferences. So hopefully you've all got really great, efficient, not too long-winded recruitment processes, but remember, actually you can adapt those to make it work for that candidate, particularly if you think they're a sort of number one choice, number two choice, and just be as sort of flexible as you can, and that will really help. Be inclusive, enable them to bring their best self to their interviews. Make sure you're asking them questions about if they need any reasonable adjustments at any point through that process, for them to be able to kind of bring their A game to the interview piece, and that will go a long way. Ask them questions, along with that first point, about who they are, what they do, what gets them excited, but just ask them the questions. Make sure you're listening to their answers. I think, again, we all know it becomes quite apparent if people are kind of asking you things, but it's not going in. And I think that's a really easy win there to sort of help that engagement piece. I think quite often, we can all be a little bit scarred by this, but obviously if you're replacing a leaver who's kind of leaving big shoes behind, you can become a little bit stuck in that, it's going to be really difficult to find somebody else that can tick all those boxes. But my kind of top tip would be, actually, when you're talking to these new candidates, you really need to focus on what they're going to bring to the role, even if you are replacing a leaver. So don't kind of focus on looking backwards, focus on them, the strengths that they will bring, the new energy that they will bring, and the difference that they can make. And again, that will really help them to feel like they belong already. We talked about it before, but I'm just going back to the community point. So make sure that during your interactions, even that very first stage, that you can start to bring to life that kind of community in the organisation they'd be joining. So touching on things like the values, the culture, the kind of shared vision and mission. They really need to start to feel like they're buying into those right from the beginning to help them carry through the recruitment process. It's also your responsibility in that first, clearly kind of touch point that you have with them, to broker a really good relationship with that candidate and any other parties that you're bringing into the mix. Clearly, you need to make sure you're professional. You also need to really make sure that everything that you're saying at every single touch point is consistent. So they're really clear about what the role looks like, what the company is like, and how they fit in. And then last but not least, just to kind of summarize, really, remember they're human, make them feel welcome, make them feel worthy, and make them feel valued, because even if you don't hire them this time, you never know when they might be great for another role, and you never know who else they might know and who they may well refer into your organisation in the future. So clearly, there's a lot of time that actually really needs to be invested in making sure that your candidate experience can be really, really strong and really, really good. And there can be a lot of pressure, I know, on hiring managers, HR recruiters, to make sure you can fulfill all of those responsibilities in, again, what we know is a very challenging and fast-paced market. We know that top talent's only hanging around for 10 days. We know you've probably all got day jobs as well, and recruitment is just another thing to think about. So in terms of kind of our tips and our advice on how to ensure that you can fulfill those responsibilities to deliver that candidate experience, I think it's about planning ahead. So you need to make sure you're committing the time from the beginning into your diaries, into your schedule, to deliver that great experience. So whether it's pre-scheduling when you're going to have all of your various touch points with your candidates to make sure no one's falling through the crack and you are giving them the attention that they need. This is a really big one. Do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. It sounds very obvious, but I think if you're promising to follow up with a candidate with news about whether they've been shortlisted, or an information pack, or anything else that they may have asked for, please, please, please try and do what you can to get back to them when you say you're going to do it, or even before. Because again, if you think about it from an impressions, are they prioritizing me as a candidate? It's a great example, and hopefully will make them realize how, as an organization, you operate. So even if there's no news in the recruitment process, for whatever reason, update them. Don't leave them hanging. Don't let their little minds start to churn and worry, because they'll soon end up on a job board again looking for something else if they're kind of assuming, oh, I haven't heard for a few days, they must have chosen somebody else. So even if there's no news, update them and let them know, and just keep checking in, even if it's just a quick text or an email. Ghosting is a big word that we quite often see about candidates ghosting employers, but I think actually it's the same. You need to be considerate of the same thing and not ghosting candidates the other way around. So even if you've been having great conversations and somebody else nice and shiny and sparkly that ticks all your boxes has come along and caught your eye, please, please, please don't forget about those that you were talking to. Do the decent thing and at least update them on where they are in the process. Explain what's going on, because again, you never know when you might want those candidates in the future. And just remember, as a recruiter, hiring manager, line manager, they are buying into the business, and you are responsible, whoever is sort of leading those conversations and or interviews, for really selling that to them. It's definitely a two-way thing. It's not just candidates having to come in and kind of sell themselves to you. You need to do the same. We know that at the moment it's still vacancies are high. Candidates are much more likely these days to have more than 1, 2, 3 offers on the table at any one time. So you need to remember that, and you need to make that experience worthy of a commitment of their time, because it can take quite a lot of time out of their schedule to come to interviews and do tests, etc. We've talked about this slightly before, but just again, remember, you need to be nimble, you need to be agile, you need to be responsive. But the key thing here is don't kind of turn into a busy fool. You need to make sure you can maintain that quality. You really don't want to get yourself in a pickle where you're mixing up candidates, because as well as things like data breaches, again, it's not a great experience from them, and would be really, really off-putting, and unfortunately probably lead to them dropping out. I would say be honest and transparent. So, businesses are busy at the moment more than ever before because we're in a challenging world, and therefore things might get delayed in recruitment processes if something else, kind of a burning platform, comes up. And if that's the case, just be honest with your candidates and let them know. But again, it's just communicating, keeping them posted. Even if those goals posts move, which is unfortunate, just be transparent about what's happening, and hopefully they will continue to sort of stay with you. I guess the two kind of closing points on this slide, really. If you do not feel like you're able to deliver a great experience for candidates, I would really, really think about dividing and conquering. So if you, for example, got 10 vacancies that you're trying to fill and you feel too stretched to do that, obviously on top of your day job, you really need to think about whether it's worth dividing and conquering and sharing those roles within other people within the organisation, or sharing them with an agency, because truly you might try and want to do it all because you want that control and you want that consistency, which is admirable, but equally the impact that it will have, because your candidate experience would be diluted, and your candidates will soon get quite a feel for the fact that they're not getting a lot of or enough of your attention, could actually be quite detrimental. So do really consider if you've got enough resource yourself to manage that experience, or if you need to divide and conquer. And then lastly, just remember your employer brand at all times. Every single interaction you have with them, again, make sure it's professional, it's honest, because you never know where those people are going to pop up in other organisations in the future. They could become customers themselves. They could, go through another recruitment process in the future, and you still want to leave them with kind of feeling really good about themselves. Finally, on this one, in bold, in case it wasn't obvious enough, I do think there is absolutely a responsibility for whoever it is that's leading that recruitment process to explain to a candidate if they aren't the right fit for that role at any point in the process, and explain why, based on kind of playing back what the candidate wants versus what's needed in the role, and just be honest and be grown up about that conversation. So even if they're ticking loads of your boxes, but actually they haven't got this core kind of experience they need, don't be afraid about being honest with them. They will appreciate that feedback. And again, even if it's not a positive outcome from that, they will remember the time that you took out of your day to kind of explain that to them, and that will hopefully help them going forwards. So how do we make sure that we're constantly improving that candidate experience? We know with everything at the moment that the world is moving very quickly. So it's quite naive to think, oh, I've got a great recruitment process, I'm not going to bother looking at how that works ever again. I'm just going to keep doing the same thing day in, day out. Unfortunately, you can't be that relaxed about it at the moment, and you need to make sure that, if you're competing against other people for talent, you need to make sure that you're ahead of them and looking at what the market's doing and updating and tweaking and refining. But it doesn't need to be complicated. I think you need to invest most of your energy into that experience itself. But every now and again, I would recommend sort of stepping back and just looking at that plan, do, check, act model, which is a really great, simple model for basically working your way through, looking at the data that you have, because I would definitely recommend using as much data as you can get your hands on to kind of look at what your baseline is, look at where you might have some issues, some blockages, where you've got people dropping out of a recruitment process, and then start to think about the priority of order of when you need to be fixing different elements and the impact those can have. So I would definitely, any data that you can extract from your ATS or your spreadsheets, however you are set up, Be looking at how long your time to hire is, where people are falling out of the process. Look at surveys. So if you're surveying your candidates, ideally it's both successful and unsuccessful candidates, so you're getting really good feedback from them on that process, and using that data to also to help you with that planning and that refinement and evergreen approach to making that experience better. And also go out to the wider business, because it's very rare that it would just be one person that's involved in recruiting a new person. So do go out to your peers and get the feedback from them, and then you've got a really nice kind of holistic view of actually where you are at the moment and where some of those issues might be, or where you can sort of focus your attention on improvements. Clearly, it's pretty obvious in the doing stage is when you then would go and implement any of those changes that you've planned. And then number 3, that check piece is almost as important as looking at your data at number 1, but that's also you kind of revalidating what's happened since you've made those changes. So have you seen the improvements? What is the data now telling you against your original benchmark? And then in ACT, it's just making any refinements that you need to really kind of button down that experience and just keep going around that loop. But I would probably recommend doing that every sort of quarter, 6 months, unless something comes in that highlights a big problem to you straight away, in which case obviously then would recommend dealing with that as soon as you can. So we're nearly there now. Thank you for sticking with me. I just thought what would be quite nice to bring this last sort of chunky slide together is actually a little bit of a roadmap, because this one I'm focusing more on, okay, so you've recruited somebody, you've done a great front end experience to get them in the door, they have accepted an offer, and so what next? So how do you make sure that you take that great recruitment experience right the way through to their entire kind of life cycle with you as an employee? So I've just broken it down into the sort of 6 natural steps. So I think this is really important, hopefully, in bringing to life actually that candidate experience piece is so important all the way through. It's not just how the interviews are conducted, it's everything. So if you're having to get your candidates to undertake pre-employment screening, which is obviously mandatory for many industries but just good business practice, please make sure that you have got a simple, obviously, but effective and intuitive screening process, because as we saw earlier on, the stats on the dropout rates can be phenomenally high if that starts to get complicated for employees. We've got a couple of great providers that we work with as part of our broader HR outsource service delivery. So if you'd like any recommendations or you want to talk to us about them, then please let us know at the end of the webinar. Then we move into onboarding. So by onboarding, we mean, issuing offer letters and contracts and all of that, kind of setting up their employee e-file. And again, here, please make sure it's a lovely, smooth experience. First and foremost, do what you say you're going to do when you're going to do it. So if you've promised to send somebody a contract by this date, make sure you do it. Quite often they'll be waiting for that offer letter and contract before they hand their notice in. So obviously the later that comes out, the later you would be kind of getting that person onboarded. And make sure all the information is correct first and foremost, because again, that's really important to make them feel like they're valued and they're paying attention. Think about your induction. Make sure you're organising it well, it's well scheduled, they've got all the access to the tech that they need. Think about the training that they need when they come on board. Make sure they've got all that support wrapped around them to make them feel valued and supported and accommodated. Think about the line manager for that person. Have they got the training to make sure that they're managing them well, effectively, supporting their development and growth? And then finally, think about all of your company-wide policies and practices. Make sure they're inclusive, that they're fair, and that they're transparent. Lovely. So I'm mindful of time. I've got 2 minutes left. So this is my final slide before I hand back to Anna. But just to bring it all back together then in terms of sort of key top tips and takeaways, test your recruitment process and your touch points. Have a look, kind of step back and have a look at how your structure of your process is at the moment, and try and marry that against what the data is telling you, where you've got dropouts, and that will give you quite a quick view of where you could probably prioritise some areas for tweaking and improving using that data. Think about your content, think about those adverts, the first thing that they're going to see. Make sure they're engaging, make sure they're accurate, there's no typos. You're really starting to promote the organisation and kind of talk to them on an individual level. Make sure you're giving your recruiters or your hiring managers the kind of process that they need to step through and what a good experience looks like, and that they're buying into that so they can also embody that themselves. Personalize your experience to each candidate. Try and stay one step ahead. You never want a candidate chasing you for anything, because again, that feels like they're having to follow up and it shouldn't be their job. You should always be one step ahead. Plan, do, check and act. And then finally, like I said before, just think employer brand at all points. Thank you, Anna. Back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sam. That's fantastic. We've got the opportunity now to see if you've got any questions for us. You've got a couple of ways of doing this. You are more than happy to use the chat facility within your toolbar, or alternatively, please do email either Sam or myself, and we'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions and just take you through anything that you've got. I'm just going to check now. I can't actually see any Q&As at the moment, so I'm conscious of time, like Sam said also. So more than happy for you to reach out to us independently if you do have any questions at all around any of the content that we've covered today, or any of the other services that we can provide here at the Curve Group. So I guess finally for me to say, just in terms of a helping hand that's almost linked to some of the items that we've talked about today, is we're more than happy to support you with skills gap analysis and succession planning, line manager training on how to manage multi-generational workforces, unconscious bias, and the beautiful world of NLP. We can do this in a number of ways, and that's including the creation of learning and development programs, buddy and mentor schemes, delivery of targeted or holistic recruitment processes, and recruitment and HR function audits as well. So what have we got coming up just before we finish? We have got a beautiful webinar coming up on the 1st of November about that very sexy topic, right to work in the UK, an employer's guide to what, how and when. And then again on the 6th of December, where we're looking ahead to 2024 and what is next for HR and people leaders. All of today's webinars today's webinar can be found once it's uploaded onto our website. We are more than happy to share with you our insights pack on a monthly basis as well, if you're interested. And all of our previous webinars can also be found on our website as well. Finally, all that's left for me to say on behalf of Sam and I is thank you very much for joining us today. It's been great having you with us. We look forward to hearing from any of you if you've got any other questions, but thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.